Welcome again, friends. So we'll discuss question numbers 41 to 50 today in this video. I hope you have your Constitution of India, the book or the app or online open. Please do that always because we will refer to it. Let's see the 10 questions for today. Question number 41 that was posted was this: which of the following provisions of the Constitution of India have a bearing on public health? Now this actually is a question which came in UPSC. I've just slightly modified this because these kind of questions always come in the exam, either on education or health, just to see your overall understanding, because these topics should be prepared otherwise also. And the first thing you should prepare in these topics, let's say education or health, what are the constitutional provisions relevant for these things? Anyway, so if we see option number 1 given here is the DPSPs, and yes, it has a bearing on public health directly. If you open your constitution and see Article 47, it will say duty of state to raise the level of nutrition and the standard of living and to improve public health. So that is definitely there. If you see then now the 11th and the 12th schedules, which are the suggestive list of subjects for the municipalities and the panchayats in India. So if you see the 11th schedule, entry number 23 has a very clear statement: health and sanitation. And if you see the 12th schedule, which is for the urban local bodies, you will see at entry number 6 by the name public health. Now in the 5th schedule, actually there is no bearing on health as such. There is nothing specifically mentioned there. However, if you see the 6th schedule, and that's one of the slight detailed differences between the 5th and the 6th schedules. In the 6th schedule, which is applicable for the 4 states of Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura and Mizoram, in paragraph number 3, in the powers of the regional and district councils to make laws with respect to various areas, there is one point mentioned, you can read there, which says public health and sanitation. So in the 6th schedule also it is there. And of course the 7th schedule, this I think is the most easy one, especially in the background of the present COVID pandemic. I'm sure you have prepared your topic very well, that in the state list, entry number 6 is public health and sanitation. 1, 2, 4 and 5, these are the only 4 correct options for this question. So again, a very poor performance. It again reflects that the basic concepts are not clear. So again and again it has come out from this series, I guess, that you guys should focus on the basics first. The lady on the right, Rajkumari Amrit Kaur, I'm sure you know her contribution in the freedom struggle of India, and she was also the first health minister of independent India. Question number 42, which of the following is not a convention? Please mind it, not a convention in the Indian constitutional system. Now, resignation of the Prime Minister on the passage of a no confidence motion in the Lok Sabha. Now, this is not written anywhere. This is not at all written that the Prime Minister has to resign or the whole Council of Ministers has to resign. In fact, the term no confidence motion itself is not written in the Constitution of India. It is in the rules. However, the resignation of the PM on the passage of no confidence is not even in the rules. It is just that it's better to be resigning than getting fired. So if you don't go and resign, then the President will dismiss you, will dissolve the Council of Ministers. So you, as a respect to the office of Prime Minister, you go and submit the resignation. So it is a convention. Hence, this is not a correct answer for the question, because it's asking which is not a convention. Similarly, option B, 3 sessions of Parliament each year. This is also not a written provision anywhere. It is a convention. Hence, not the correct answer of this question. I'm sure we know that under Article 85, the Constitution is very clear that the maximum time that can be lapsed between 2 sessions of Parliament is 6 months. So which essentially means that we must have 2 sessions of Parliament every year. However, we have 3. It has been a convention: the budget session, the monsoon session and the winter session. then appointment of the senior most member of Lok Sabha as the pro tem speaker. I'm sure you know that the term pro tem speaker itself is not written under any of the rules of the parliament or even the Constitution of India. So of course their appointment, etc., it all happens through convention. Hence this is also not the correct option for this. You should know that it is just a convention. However, it's not necessarily followed all the time. For example, last year's election, 2019 Lok Sabha election itself, the senior most member of parliament was an 8-time MP, Madam Menaka Gandhi. However, less senior, a 7-time MP, Mr. Virendra Kumar, was appointed the speaker pro tem. Similarly, I hope you remember again towards the later part of 2019, after the Maharashtra election, BJP's MLA, Mr. Kalidas Kolambakar, was appointed the speaker pro tem, while the state Congress president, Mr. Balasaheb Thorat, was an 8-time MLA and was the senior most. So convention is a convention. Anyway, so for this question, the correct answer should be none of these. And again, the performance has not been that great. Question number 43, in the Constitution of India, which of the following makes provision for promoting international peace and security? I think, when I made the question, at least, that this is a very straightforward question. And a good number of you got it correct also. But however, it was not as per my satisfaction. So if you see Article 51 in the DPSPs, this is very clearly written there in terms of the directives given to the government. So the correct option here is this only. So yeah, as you can see, hardly 64% actually got it correct. So it's better than other questions, but in such simpler questions, straightforward questions where you don't need to spend time beyond 30 seconds, performance should be better. Next question, question number 44. Which of the following statements about the Constitution of India is or are correct? First statement says it is more flexible than rigid. Now, what does flexibility mean and what does rigidity mean? Now, see, it's not about rigid does not mean that it cannot be amended. A constitution is a waste if it cannot be amended. I am sure you realize that. So, whether it is flexible or rigid, in both situations, the constitution can be amended. Amendability is always there. It's just the procedure for amendment. Now, for a federal system like India, mind it again, for a federal system, flexibility essentially means when only one of the entities of the federation, that is center or state, they alone can amend the constitution through an ordinary legislative process. So when the process is same as enacting any law, by the same procedure, if you can amend the constitution alone, then that is flexible. Rigidity is essentially the idea that the procedure is different from being ordinary. That means you have a special procedure, and that special procedure also involves the states. So that is why Indian Constitution is rigid only in those parts where this happens, and that is of course whenever there is division of power. Of course, all this rigidity is to protect division of power. So that is a very specific, few areas where division of power happens, and that is where you involve the states also. But rest of the constitution as such is a flexible constitution, because the government alone, even if there is a special provision, the government alone, the central government alone can amend those parts of the constitution. So option A is correct. Second, it provides a certain justiciable rights as well as a certain non-justiciable rights. Of course, we know the justiciable rights, the fundamental rights, and the non-justiciable rights. This is where I see there is some confusion in the minds of people, that DPSPs how they are a right in itself. Of course, they are a right because it puts a duty on the government of the day to enact laws to make certain provisions for the people. So as we read just a little while ago today itself, in Article 47, it says it is the duty of the state to raise the level of nutrition and public health and things like that. So it creates a duty on the state, and hence naturally it is a right of the people. But the point is, it is not justiciable. So this is also a correct statement. Hence the correct option for this question should be both of these. Now our friend here is Nani Palkhiwala, a legendary person. So his, I guess in his time, his main claim to fame was the Keshwananda Bharati judgment, and also he refused, he's known very popularly for that, he refused a seat on the Supreme Court. So he did not want to come there. He always wanted to work as an independent attorney. So you can read about him more. A very inspirational personality, definitely. Question number 45. Which of the following relate to the concept of separation of power? This is a very straightforward question. However, the performance has been actually, to my mind, pathetic. Again, a very conceptual topic. Again and again, I'm highlighting for your benefit only. You must be realizing conceptual topics, first priority. That is what UPSC is going to check, especially in prelims, because only then you can talk about higher level concepts of ideas and thoughts and opinions in mains. Separation of power was given by the French jurist, let me just write it first, Montesquieu, philosopher Montesquieu. We did have his photograph in one of the earlier videos. And separation of power essentially means that the powers of a government are separated between the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. The powers are separated. When you see option A, when it says separation of power between governments at federal and provincial level, that means between government of India and the state government. That is not a separation of power, that is division of power. So here the correct answer for us should be B. Very sadly, the performance, while I expected around it should be 80 plus, it was just under 60%. That's the first Chief Justice of India, Justice H. J. Kania. Question number 46. Which of the following are discretionary powers of the President of India? Now, see, if I was you, I'll realize that the discretionary powers of the President of India, they're very limited. And most of the situations which happen through an advice, it is not really a discretion of the President. Of course, as long as the Council of Ministers is enjoying the majority of the Lok Sabha. So anyway, let's see. So it says pardon of the death sentence. No, this is not a discretionary power. This is done by the Council of Ministers, specifically in the allocation of business rules. It is the Ministry of Home Affairs. To promulgate ordinances, that is also on the advice of Council of Ministers. The concerned ministry will advise the President on that. Then proclaiming national emergency, that is also not a discretionary power. That is advice of the Cabinet. This is even written in Article 352 of the Constitution, I'm sure you know. Address to the Parliament's first session every year. This is also not a discretionary power. In fact, you should know that the address in the first session is nothing but the address of the Council of Ministers. It is given by the Council of Ministers. It is written in a way under the guidance of the Council of Ministers. It is the agenda of the government that the President speaks about. All the proposed legislation in the year, the performance of the government in the last year. In fact, if you ever hear his speech, the President's speech, the President will always refer to everything in the speech in this way, he will say that my government has done this, my government will do this, my government proposes, my government. So it is essentially the Council of Ministers speech that he reads. Similarly, dissolving the Lok Sabha, that is also not a discretionary power. That is done on the advice of the Council of Ministers. So actually the correct option for this question should be none of these. Now understand one thing in dissolving of Lok Sabha, President cannot dissolve a Lok Sabha without the advice of Council of Ministers. However, the advice is binding only when the Council of Ministers have the majority, enjoy the majority of the Lok Sabha. If they don't have the majority, then the advice is not binding. President may not dissolve a Lok Sabha, but the bottom line still remains. President cannot dissolve a Lok Sabha without the advice of Council of Ministers. Again, just about half of you got this question's answer correct. So I expected better performance. But anyway, so you can quickly read some of the information that I thought would be very interesting for you there. 47, which of these events would result in immediate collapse of the Council of Ministers of the Union? Immediate collapse, that means an automatic collapse. Resignation of the PM, yes, it will result into the dissolution of Council of Ministers. Remember, Prime Minister is the pivot with which the Council of Ministers remain in power. Council of Ministers are there because of the Prime Minister. So if the Prime Minister is not there, there cannot be any Council of Ministers. Similar, on the same line, second is also correct. Prime Minister goes, Council goes. Imposition of President's rule. It's kind of unnecessary nonsense point, because why will Union Council go for President's rule? Of course, the State Council gets dissolved when the President takes over the administration. So State Council is dissolved, but not the Union Council. So this was unnecessarily to confuse. But I wonder, why do you get confused in such things? Withdrawal of the support from the alliance members of the ruling coalition. Now it says immediate collapse. That is not necessary here, because if the alliance members withdraw support, another alliance could be formed, right? And it's just that the President will ask the Council of Ministers to prove their majority, and let's say he gives them X amount of days, and within that time they can get some other people to support them, and they may be able to prove majority. So it will not automatically result into the dissolution of the Council of Ministers. So only 1 and 2. Performance was not up to the mark here as well. But as long as we are improving, it's important for us. Question number 48. Which of these advices tendered by the Council of Ministers may be required by the President for their reconsideration? That means if the Council gives any of these advices, President can ask for reconsideration. Honestly, if I am you, my answer, even without looking at the option, will be all of these. Because whatever is an advice can always be returned. Now the only trick somebody can play here is that something written here is not an advice altogether. So the first point itself is not correct here, that it's not even an advice. How can President return? So that is the only thing I will check in the answer then, to confirm that I'm getting it right. So essentially I'm going to ask, is it an advice? And if it's an advice, it can be returned, obviously. So commuting the death sentence of a convict, just in the previous question we saw, it is an advice and hence it can be returned. Withholding assent to the bill, that means rejecting a bill. It is also on the advice of the council and hence it can be returned. Promulgating an ordinance, we saw it's an advice earlier. It's not a discretionary power, hence this can also be returned. Appointment of the governor of a state, that is also done by the President on the advice of the council, and if it's an advice, it can be returned. So it's a decently straightforward question, but somehow I'm still waiting for a performance, a good performance by the respondents on the channel, where I can see that a lot of you are actually developing understanding through your preparation. Anyway, moving on, question number 49. After the passage of a no confidence motion in the Lok Sabha, to whom shall the Prime Minister submit his resignation? Now this again is a classic example. It's such a straightforward question, but a lot of you just don't get the right answer. So I am still wondering what is missing in your preparation. Perhaps in the coming videos we'll take that up, and I hope these videos are helping you get that clarity. Now see, Prime Minister is part of the Union Executive, whose head is the President of India, and President of India appoints the Prime Minister and the Council of Ministers, basically the executive. Even you, when you clear this exam and you become a civil servant of the Union, you will also be appointed by the President of India. So, when the Prime Minister has to resign, of course the PM will resign to the President. Right? Now, don't get confused that Prime Minister most likely is, but it's totally possible he is not, most likely is a member of Parliament also. Now, when the member of Parliament has to resign, they will resign by submitting their resignation to the Speaker. But here it's the Prime Minister. It's not the member of Parliament from Varanasi who's resigning. It is Prime Minister of India resigning. So they will resign to the President of India. Never be confused. They still will continue to remain as a member of Parliament. Just that they will not hold the post of Prime Minister. Anyway, C and D are anyway useless options, just to create options there. So 64% only. Better than other questions, but expectation is more here as well. So question number 50. The Prime Minister as the head of Council of Ministers, some statements are made for us, has a free hand in the distribution of portfolios. Portfolios are the ministries which are allocated to the minister. So yes, it is the decision of the Prime Minister. Of course, in reality, there are a lot of political considerations that may go in the discussion chamber, in the mind of the Prime Minister. But ultimately, for us, for the Constitution, it is the decision of the Prime Minister. Can reshuffle the ministers and ask any minister to resign? Yes, that happens. It is because of one itself you can derive two as well. So if the ministers don't resign, then the PM can always advise the President to remove a minister, because a minister can be appointed and removed on the advice of PM. And if you see Article 75 of the Constitution, it very clearly says that a minister holds office during the pleasure of the President. So it's the Prime Minister's advice which can get a minister removed as well. But anyway, the first thing is you can ask them to resign. The PM is bound by the advice of the ministers? No, not at all, nothing like that. They all work as a team. Prime Minister is the leader. They have their own mechanisms to come up to decisions. And if the ministers are of one opinion, Prime Minister need not agree to that. But of course, then either the ministers will go or the Prime Minister will go, most likely. Whoever has a bigger clout in the party. Anyway, fourth point, advises the ministers in their day-to-day affairs. No, he has no business to do that. He does not have even time to do that. In fact, it's not his prerogative. Otherwise, why do you have ministers for? So the word day-to-day affairs, it is very important, because otherwise, when there are very higher level issues which are not day-to-day operations, let's say management of COVID-19 or a situation of crisis like a war, or let's say demonetization, these kind of things are where just one minister cannot take decisions, and it's not a day-to-day affair. Then the whole team has to come in, and then Prime Minister has a big role to play in leading the whole government's work. So again, see, less than half of you got it right. So anyway, these were the 10 questions for today, and since I already told you the 4 Mahavakyas of the 4 Ved, this time I thought I'll talk to you about what a student's life is and what it should be. So there's a shloka which it used to inspire me as well. Not that I used to follow it all the time, so I thought I'll share this with you. Kak cheshta bako dhyanam swana nidra tathavacha alpahari grihatyagi vidyarthi panchalakshanam. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of this. Those who have not and who could not understand, it means efforts of a crow. I'm sure you remember the story of the crow and the pot with the water, where the crow actually ended up getting the water through lot of efforts. The concentration of a swan, how a swan in a lake is so much focused on catching the fish that even the fish doesn't realize it's in danger. The sleep like a dog, even the slightest of the disturbance should wake you up. Alpahari, eating light, grihatyagi, disconnected from homely affairs. This does not mean that you leave your house, etc. necessarily and go to Rajendra Nagar or Mukherjee Nagar or wherever it is, but being disconnected from general affairs where you get attached. These are the 5 characteristics of a student. So that's the checklist of 5. See how many you are able to tick in your life. Anyway, I'll see you in the next video with question numbers 51 to 60. Thank you. Study well.